Good morning. Kind of hard to follow that song. That was kind of a sermon in and of itself. I want to follow up a little bit on what we talked about last week. And we talked about the fact that we aren't, as the church, really good at sharing the good things that God has done for us. And we're not real good at giving our testimony about how great God has been in our life. And part of that is because we don't want to have to talk about the bad things God's brought us out of. You know, because when we look at what God's done for us, a lot of the good that God's done for us is bringing us out of the bad places that, to some degree, we've gotten ourselves. And we'd like to just kind of run away from all of that and pretend like it didn't happen and not carry that reputation with us. There's another thing we do, though, that I think is a disservice to the world. And I think it's something that has shaped the way the world looks at this spiritual situation that's going on in relation to the life that we live here on this earth. And that's how we deal with adversity. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We're all going to deal with adversity. Everybody's going to be, more than once in their life, dealing with a problem that can seem completely overwhelming. It may be the day you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you the news about an illness that you have. And something that you just look at and go, how in the world am I going to make it through this? How am I going to come out the other end? Will my life even be the same? And you start thinking of all the things that you won't be able to do anymore because of that illness. It may be the adversity of crushing loneliness, where you just feel alone. And you don't feel like anybody understands, that nobody cares, that nobody sees you, that nobody hears you, and that there is absolutely nobody on your side, that you're all by yourself. It may be the adversity of a horrible relationship. You're in a relationship and it's just not working and it's dysfunctional and you want it to work so bad and you don't see any way, and all the relationship that you want so badly to work, all it's doing is bringing you hurt and it's bringing you pain and it just seems like it's just going to squish you. Or money, and you don't know where it's going to come from. And you don't know how you're going to pay for the next bill, and you don't know what's going to happen, and all you can do is lay in bed and think about money. And all of a sudden, it just seems to just squish you. It may be your children, it may be, there's a whole list. We could go on, couldn't we? All of these things that are just huge problems in our life that bring us adversity, and that when we're in the middle of them, it just seems like it's going to crush us. It's going to destroy us. And we're the world's worst because you know what we think is the best thing to do? Suffer in silence. Just like we don't tell anybody about the great things God's done for us a lot of times, we also don't tell anybody about the struggles we're going through. We don't want to burden somebody else. We don't want to be a problem, or whatever reason. Or maybe we're ashamed of the problems we're going through. We don't tell anybody. And so we suffer in silence, and we get so self-absorbed in our issues and our problems and our adversity that we don't even look at the adversity of other people. And so here we are walking through this life, all these souls suffering with adversity quietly and to ourselves, and robbing ourselves of gifts, robbing ourselves of blessing. Now, you know, if I'm going to talk about a lesson on adversity, you know what book of the Bible I got to go to, right? Book of Job. So if you want to turn over to the book of Job in chapter 1, we're going to start in verses 13 through 22. And I want to talk about adversity and how we deal with adversity and what's happening in our life in adversity and how the church has cheated the world. You heard me right. The church has cheated the world by pretending like we don't have adversity. Now, you can turn on the TV right now, and you can hear some preachers tell you that if you will follow God, you're not going to worry about money anymore. And you're not going to worry about illness anymore. And you're not going to worry about anything anymore. Because if you follow God, it's all going to be great. I don't think they went to the book of Job. Because Job followed God, I guarantee you, better than any of us in here. God said, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one like him on the earth. Now, I can guarantee you God has never said that about me. I promise. He has never said, have you considered John? There's nobody. Well, he may have said it, but he meant it the opposite way maybe. Because he didn't mean it being good, I promise. So Job is living this life where he has given everything to God. He's followed God, and he is so upright that God would say in heaven to everybody assembled, there's nobody on earth as good as Job. Well, now, according to the doctrine of Lot preached today, Job shouldn't have any problems, should he? He's going to be everything. He's going to have everything, and that's what it seemed like. But Job chapter 1, starting in verse 13. Now on the day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans attacked and took them. They also slew the servants with the edge of the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another servant came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven, and it burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another also came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, and they made a raid on the camels and took them and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. And while that one was still speaking, another also came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their oldest brother's house, and behold, a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they all died. And I alone have escaped to tell you. And then Job arose, and he tore his robe, and he shaved his head, and he fell to the ground, and he worshipped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Through all this, Job did not sin, nor did he blame God. So if you came in tomorrow, and you go to work, and they say, your job's gone, sorry, you can't work anymore. And you come home, and the banker's standing there and says, hey, there's been a paperwork error, you hadn't paid enough on your house, get out, you got 2 days to leave. And then the car company comes and says, hey, we made a mistake, you hadn't paid enough on your car, we're taking it back too. And then they come and say, oh, and by the way, your child just died. How many of you are going to fall down and say, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord? I'll tell you, that's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to start screaming. And I'm going to get mad, and I'm going to get angry, and I'm going to get upset, and I am going to loudly protest that what I am dealing with is not fair. That what I'm going through is not fair, it's not right, it's not what should be. Our human nature to adversity comes in several different ways, and it came for Job. If we continue to read through chapters 2 all the way through about 10 or 11, you're going to find out that people have some options for Job. They have some options for Job that are going to help him through this time. All of his friends. So his friends come and they sit with him, and they know what's happened. He's lost everything. He's even lost his children, and they say, Job, it's your fault. You have done something to make God mad. You need to blame yourself. Boy, we're good at that in adversity, aren't we? You know, we do it really in a flippant way. Something goes good, I'll take playing golf. When I hit a good golf shot, which is rarely, but when I hit one, somebody goes, oh, you must be living right. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means we've been blessed because we did the right thing. We're good, we got rewarded. We're bad, we got punished. And we kind of think it that way, and so we turn the blame on us. And so when bad things happen, when we're lonely, we say, well, I must be lonely because I'm not lovable. It's my fault. When we don't have the money we need, well, I'm just horrible with money. It must be my fault. Sometimes maybe we have some responsibility. Sometimes we have absolutely no responsibility. Adversity happens whether we are responsible for it or not, but we tend to blame ourselves often. That's what Job's friends wanted. They said, blame yourself. If you'll just stand up to God and say, God, it's all my fault, you'll feel better and everything will get better. But so often what happens is when we blame ourselves and we say, it's all my fault and I'm the one that's responsible, it's all my fault, then all we do is we get more and more down on ourselves, more and more depressed about ourselves. We have no worth that we have, and all it does is, guess what? It leads us to destructive behavior. It leads us to a place where sometimes we have absolutely no hope, because if it's all my fault, just by the nature of who I am, guess what? I can't fix that. And if I can't fix that, what do I expect? Well, more adversity. Job told his friends, he said, I can't think of anything I've done. I can't figure out anything I've done why this would be my fault. I don't know anything I've done that would make this my fault. And they kept saying, guess what? Well, you've done it anyway. Now, have you ever worked for somebody or gone to school under a teacher who you didn't really know their rules? You just know you kept breaking them? You know, they'd get mad at you and you'd be like, well, if you just tell me what the rule is, I'd follow the rule, but I don't. And when you don't know the rules and you don't know what you've done wrong, it paralyzes you. And it does that to us. Adversity, if it makes us blame ourselves excessively, we become paralyzed because we think there's no way out. We are trapped. And it becomes a problem. The second one is Job's wife. Now, Job's wife, I think, gets a much harder time from us than she deserves. Okay, Job's wife had an option. Job, curse God and die. This will be over with. Now, what we forget is everything that happened to Job also happened to his wife. She lost all of her money too. She lost all of her security too. She lost her children too. We give Job all this credit for the suffering. She suffered every single bit as much as he did. And in the midst of her suffering, she did the second human nature. The first is to blame ourselves. Guess what the second is? Blame somebody else. It's my parents' fault. That's why I turned out this way. I can blame mom and dad. It's their fault. I turned out this way because of them. Or it's because I didn't have this opportunity. Or it's because the rich people that kept me down. That's why I turned out this way. And if you look in our world today, people are getting really good at blaming other folks. They're getting really good at it, and all it does is divide people. Well, she was really good at saying, Job, this is all your fault. We are going through this, Job, because you have done it. And in the back of her mind, if he curses God and dies and he's the problem, guess what happens for her? Problem goes away. Problem solved. Now, that's probably not how she intellectually thought about it, but that's how she emotionally thought about it. And how many times do we do that? We're in a horrible relationship and we blame the other person 100%. And so we know if we can just get out of that relationship and get away from it, that we're going to get in another relationship and everything's going to be perfect because it's all that person's fault, right? And what happens, I can tell you from my experience what happens. If we take zero responsibility at all, we get into this other relationship and we bring some of the same stupid stuff we did in the first relationship into the second one, and guess what? We have problems again. If we're not careful, we'll still turn around and blame the other person. Job's wife's answer to adversity was blame the other person. Now, Job, in all of this, it says he was faithful and never blamed God. And Job did not blame God. That wasn't Job's issue. Job's issue is he wanted to answer to why. Why is this happening, God? Basically, Job said, I deserve an explanation. If I can understand it, I can deal with it. If I can figure it out, I can handle it. But if I can't figure it out, I can't handle it. So tell me why. You owe me an explanation, God. Well, honestly, God did not owe Job an explanation. And God said, okay, Job, I'll tell you what, if you can explain all these other things to me, I'll explain that to you. So why was Job going through adversity? Why was he having this problem? Well, flip back just a little bit in chapter 1 to verses 6 through 12. And here's where I think we as a church have honestly done the world a huge disservice. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" And Satan answered the Lord and said, "From roaming about on the earth and walking around on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil." And Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But put forth your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And then the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not put forth your hand on him." So Satan departed from the presence of the Lord. And then we go into verse 13 where all the stuff happened. Do you know how Satan is described in Scripture sometimes? The adversary. Now, is it interesting that the word adversity and adversary seem to have the same root word? The adversary. The one who creates adversity. And guess who is the very last one we tend to blame when we have adversity? It's Satan. We don't look around and say, "Hey, Satan's out there and he wants to make me miserable. Satan's out there and he wants to cause me problems. And I'm having problems because Satan doesn't want me to connect with God. And because he doesn't want me to connect with God, he's going to dump problems on me. And I'm going to have adversity." I saw a poll the other day that for the first time, more people believe in extraterrestrials than believe in Jesus Christ. But if you think that's bad, half of the people who believe in Jesus, only half of the people who believe in Jesus Christ believe there's a Satan. Only half of the people who believe in Jesus Christ believe in Satan. How can you fight an enemy if you don't even believe that enemy exists? He's going to get us. He's out to get us. He's out to create adversity. Because if you look, if we blame ourselves, if we have problems and we blame ourselves to the point of despair, who wins? Do we win? You can answer no. Do we win? All right. If we blame ourselves to the point of despair, does God win? No. If we blame ourselves to the point of despair, does our family win? There's only one winner if we blame ourselves to the point of despair. Satan. He's the only winner in that outcome. Okay, what about if we take the other tack and we blame other people? If we blame other people, do we win? If we blame other people, do they win? Does the world win? No. Who wins? Satan's the only one that wins. If we blame other people, he's the only one that wins. If we start to question God and say, why, God, I just don't understand why, do we win? No. Does the world win? No. Satan wins. Do you see how if we take adversity and we blame anybody but the adversary, he wins? He wins because we start focusing our energy in the wrong direction. Our energy is not in opposing the adversary. Our energy is in fixing something that really isn't the problem. Karen's a doctor. She comes in, you come in, you say, "I got a headache." She goes, "I'll give you Tylenol." 3 months later, you've been taking Tylenol every day. You come in and say, "I got a headache." "I'll give you a little bit stronger Tylenol." Now, if she does that, she's not a very good doctor. She needs to say, what's causing the headache? What's making your head hurt? Let's fix that, and then you won't have any more headaches. We have adversity and adversity and adversity, and because we don't oppose the adversary, our adversity just causes us more and more problems and more issues and more trouble. And boy, it's hard to be faithful in the midst of adversity, isn't it? when things aren't going right, it is hard. Maybe not for you. It is hard for me to be faithful. It is tough for me to be faithful when things aren't going right, because I become convinced by the lie of the adversary that it's always going to be like this. That it's never going to get better. It's never going to improve. It's always going to be like this. And I give in to that lie, and then all of a sudden the adversity becomes like a cloud or a fog that falls over me. And I feel like I'm kind of wandering through my life with this fog over me, kind of just stumbling around. And I don't even worry about anything except, if I could just make it to tomorrow. Maybe if I can just make it to tomorrow, some strange thing will happen and everything will be all right. And so I just stumble through life, just barely holding on by a rope. Turn over to Job chapter 23. Job chapter 23. Job knew this fog. In Job chapter 23, verses 8 and 9, he says, "Behold, I go forward, but God is not there. And look backwards, but I cannot see him. When he acts on the left, I do not behold him, and when he turns to the right, I cannot see him." Have you felt like that? I mean, this fog descends on you and you feel like it doesn't matter where I go, God's not there. It doesn't matter where I turn, I can't see him to the front, I can't see him to the back. We become convinced nobody loves us, nobody cares about us, nobody wants to be around us, nobody, and we just get this fog. I know I've been there. I've just lived in the fog of problems, the fog of issues that have clouded me. And as we live in that fog, we do not become good representatives of God, because guess what? If we can't see God, guess what we don't do? We don't talk about him either. We don't praise him. We don't lift him up. We just say, well, yeah, I believe he's there. And maybe he'll help me make it through tomorrow. You see, this world does not need a gospel that says there's not going to be any adversity, because it's a lie. And all it will do is, if you convince people that when they become a Christian, everything's better and they have no problems, all you will do is make sure they quit being a Christian pretty quick. They will become a Christian, and then soon as problem and adversity comes, it's gone. If you convince somebody that giving up whatever sin is dominating their life is going to make their life suddenly easier, you have done them a disservice. Because yes, there are ways their life is going to be easier for laying that sin down, and there are ways their life is going to be harder for laying that sin down. Because there is an adversary out there, and when you are starting to win with God, the adversary gets mad. And when you start to win with God, he's going to go to God and he's going to say, "Hey, look at there. I've seen your servant John, but you know what? You put a hedge around him. You're not letting anything bad happen to him. That's why he's following you. I'm going to do something bad and see what happens." Because if you start winning, guess what? He doesn't like it. The thing that makes Satan maddest is when you win. Job comes around in verse 10 of chapter 23. He says, "But God knows the way I take, and when he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold." The message our world needs today is you're going to have problems. But you know what? When you have a problem, you got a friend. And you got a friend that's right there with you in the middle of the problem every step of the way. Whether you can see him or not, whether you feel him or not, whether you know he's there or not, he's there, because he's promised he will not leave you, he will not forsake you, and he will not abandon you. The message our world needs is God is in the problems, because he's already beaten the adversary. He's already beaten him. Satan's got a big lie that he tells us with all these problems. And the big lie is we can't get through it. We can. And if we hang on to God, we will. It may not be as fun as we wanted, or as easy as we wanted, or as carefree as we wanted, but the truth is we will get through it, because that's what God has promised. Go on to verses 11 and 12. My foot has held fast to his path. I have kept his way and not turned aside. I have not departed from the command of his lips, and I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. Job says, okay, in the middle of all this adversity, here's what I'm going to hang on to. I'm not going to look at the cloud and the fog and wonder why I can't see God right now. I'm going to focus on the path. God put the path there, and I'm going to focus on the path. I'm going to know that He's there, and I'm going to know that He's given me some words and some commands and some things to follow, and those things to follow are what's going to get me through this adversity. Not some miracle, not some big thing, not some grand revelation to me so I understand everything. What's going to get me through the adversity is saying that God is here. He's in the middle of it. When I see Him, when I don't. When I feel Him, when I don't. He's still here. He's not the one that's moved or changed. It's me that can't perceive Him. It's me that has a problem seeing Him. Adversity wins way, way too often. How many of you know somebody? How many of you know somebody that came to this very assembly but no longer comes because adversity hit their life? Because the fog got them, because you know what? Part of the problem was they felt like they're the only one in this assembly going through that. They felt like everybody else's life was pretty easy and their life was hard. Folks, we need to share our adversity. Our adversity is not to be ashamed of. Our adversity means the enemy is fighting us. And when we come into this assembly and when we come to God and adversity hits us, it means Satan's scared. We've rattled him. He wants to take us back. He wants us to get up and walk out on God. And He wants to do it not for our good. He wants to do it because He doesn't like God. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't want us. He doesn't need us. He only wants to hurt God. And every time He takes one of us away from God's family, He hurts God. You're just a chip in His game. You see, that's the difference. To God, you're family. To Satan, you're nothing but a pawn. Now, who do you want to follow? Do you want to follow the God that says, I'm here when you can't see me? When life fogs up so much through hardship, I'm holding your hand even if you can't feel it. And I promise you that I will lead you to a place where one day you will have absolutely no adversity. Or do you want to follow the one who says, I don't care about you. In fact, I'm going to take you to the place where the adversity you feel right now, it ain't nothing with what I got coming. And the only reason I want to do it, it's not you. I want to do it because I hate him. If you think this life is bad, and you think the suffering that Satan has brought into the midst of our world right now is bad, you just hang on. Because the suffering he brings to the next world and those who go with him make this look like a cakewalk. We have done a disservice by telling our world that we don't suffer. We do. Every one of us suffers. But we've done our world an even bigger disservice by telling them that the suffering isn't caused by the adversary. God is real. Can I get an amen on that? Amen. Jesus is real. Amen. And Satan is real. But God has already beat Satan. Your adversity does not define you. In fact, your adversity allows God to create triumph in you. When Paul faced adversity and when he struggled with adversity, God told him, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. The world needs to hear from us that we are weak. We're weak. We don't have this all figured out. We haven't got rid of all the problems. We are weak. But God is strong. And our confidence is not in my ability to obey the rules or my ability to figure everything out or my ability to do everything. My confidence is in God is strong and God will save. Whatever your adversity is, whatever the fog looks like right now, I can promise you there's one that wants to lead you through the fog and there's one that wants to keep you. God is the one who wants to lead you through the fog. And through His Son, Jesus Christ, He can do it. And He will do it. Reach up your hand. You may not feel Him holding it, but He's there. And if you reach for Him, He takes it. And He can lead you through anything this life throws at you and anything the adversary puts in your path. If you need reassurance about that, there'll be some folks at the back who want to pray with you. If you've never given your life to God, you need to give it to Him. Because He is the only way you can beat the adversary. There is no other way. But the good news, and Karen said this one time, you get caught up in the book of Revelation, there's just one line, there's one thing to the book of Revelation. God wins. In fact, if you really want to look at it, the book of Revelation says God's already won. It's already done. He's won, and He's taking you with Him if you want to go. So if you want to go and you need help, meet somebody at the back while we stand and sing.